Stablecoins are the shortest hop on chain for the average person. They should also be the shortest hop cross-chain for the average person. You know, whether you're sort of crypto deep and more crypto aware or not, doesn't matter.
What makes these institutions want to build either in a multi-chain environment, which facilitates what you guys do, or on a semi-permissioned, permissionless chain environment where they have also kind of a bit more control over?
And we build a lot of great tech, but it turns out at the end of the day, you got to translate it into something very simple that people want. And clearly people want stables. So good on us.
Welcome back to the Rollup. We are your hosts. I'm Andy.
I'm Robbie, and this is your home to learn from the biggest guests, the brightest minds at the tip of innovation.
Our goal is to help spread the collective knowledge of everyone in our community.
We are breaking crypto out of its echo chamber and taking it to the real world.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy a quick word from some of our awesome partners who make this show possible. Crypto UX? Broken. AI? Can't trust it. Let Magic Newton set you free. It puts your on-chain transactions on autopilot. Does all the work for you 24/7 so you can go do what you want. The vision of Magic Labs. The creators of embedded wallets. Used and backed by the best. See for yourself. Simpler crypto UX. Verifiable AI agents. Newton.xyz. All right, Ryne, we're in NYC for Stablecoin. A lot of stablecoin people here. There's about 1,000 people in the city this week just championing stablecoins.
No doubt. Yeah.
This would not have happened 2 years ago.
No way. I often tell people in the early days of eco, there were like two pitches for eco. One was to get people to believe that stablecoins were going to be a thing.
Yeah.
And then I could get them to hopefully believe eco is going to be a thing. Now I just don't have to do the first one anymore. Yeah. Right? Like that one's just true.
Yeah.
And so we can talk only about eco without having to convince people what stables are and why they're important.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big part of the entire market's education gap for stablecoins, but also just for digital assets as a whole. Yeah. I just kind of feel like we've crossed that chasm as an entire industry as of the last year or two.
100%. Yeah. No doubt.
Yeah. So let's just start with some hot takes on stablecoins. You had one that we were just talking about with regards to fragmentation. Eco is quite focused on essentially solving the stablecoin fragmentation problem. We both agree that stables are the best asset to transfer across chains. There are native versions on certain chains. There are wrapped versions on some chains, and there are more issuers coming into the market now than ever. Obviously, we've got USDC and Circle, Tether and USDT. And now we're seeing a lot more entrants come in. And your take is?
Fragmentation is going to get worse before it gets better.
Okay.
100%.
But worse than it was because in 2020, 2021, we had wormhole wrapped stable coins and then XLR wrapped stable coins. And then, you had native USTC and then EUSDC on Avalanche. There was a lot going on.
Yeah.
It feels better now.
It does feel better now. It's a little bit different market space in 2021, right? Like a bunch of us DeFi degens were kind of willing to tolerate it.
Yeah.
Right. Probably actually transacting more often in ETH than stables back then, at least many of us. Right. So I think it's just a little bit different market with a lot of new entrants in the meantime, but way more chains and protocols that matter and are super legit today. Bunch of flashes in the pan in 2021. Bunch of it, well, all of it really was built on Ethereum mainnet, right? Totally different landscape now. The rollups and sort of the Altel ones, I think that, there's probably an 80-20 rule there. There's going to be, 10 to 20 chains that do the vast majority of the volume on different VMs, some of them now. And so it's just a different landscape. And if you think about it, every single week, there is a new chain or protocol and or a new stable deployment or launch announcement. Every single one of those adds a row or a column to the fragmentation matrix, right? And so yeah, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I think in some sense, that's actually Eco's market opportunity. Right, we're sort of in the interop space among chains, but we view stablecoins as a really important solution for that.
So with the addition of new stablecoin issuers as well as chains, there's this demand that's clearly here.
Yeah.
But I think people in the community are still trying to kind of wrap their head around why and how. And so I would love to just understand from your perspective, the market landscape of stablecoins from the issuer's perspective into the chain perspective and also into the application perspective as to these certain DeFi applications using them. Why are there so many issuers coming to try to compete with Circle and Tether? Is there a real market opportunity there now? And then we're also kind of shifting towards like what I would call like purpose-built chains for stablecoins. You mentioned Plasma, Converge.
Yeah.
Like where's the market opportunity in those two sectors, and then how does that kind of tie into like this broader kind of like stablecoin supply chain?
Okay, so there's a few segments that you mentioned there. Let's start with just like the issuer landscape itself. There's, I think, 3 market opportunities for an issuer today. One is that Tether and USDC gained tons of traction on particular chains, but chains are launching faster than they are expanding. So naturally, that's white space for a new entrant. Number 2, they obviously don't share interest with end users, and so that's a huge incentive opportunity for a new entrant. Number 3, programmability. Right now, they're both getting better about this, okay? But right now, from an sort of like an issuer's perspective, there may be any number of things that you want to program into the stablecoin sort of rules for transacting, yield share, distribution model, etc. And that's a new opportunity as well. I think that's an area where the likes of M0 are seeing sort of some traction, right? And so from the issuer's perspective, there's still a lot of white space in the market, right? Demand for stables and new chain expansion are both growing more quickly than Tether and USDC have been able to meet. Great opportunity. From the chain perspective, that's something you also asked about, right? Well, first of all, stablecoin is the most interoperable asset on chain. It's the only asset class that can get you across any sort of routing kind of vector, right? And so I think any new chain that's launching knows they need to king make a stable or, a sort of handful of stables in order to get people into their chain, right? Especially if they're outside Ethereum. If the sort of ETH is not going to cross that chasm, it's going to be a stable coin that gets liquidity from point A to point B and gets it into their new chain. And then you increasingly have sort of like some specialized chains like the Plasmas, the Codexes, the Converge you mentioned. And I think they're just looking at sort of the demand for stables writ large. They understand that having super fast, super cheap, highly optimized stablecoin transactions is sort of like a valuable case on chain, and they're trying to own a lot of that flow. And you can just customize a lot of your smart contract kind of implementation as well as your VM to just make it better for transacting in stables. And they all have a slightly different angle on that, right? And so that's sort of the way I see the chain landscape, why stables are important to it. And I think also you mentioned app developers.
Yeah, kind of like closing off this supply chain. It's like issuers to the chains and then to the applications.
So this is, this is an area where I'm pretty opinionated. Stablecoins are the shortest hop on chain for the average person.
Yeah,
they should also be the shortest hop cross chain for the average person. Whether you're sort of crypto deep and more crypto aware or not, doesn't matter. Those things being true, I believe that if you hold a stable anywhere on chain, that should be good enough to do the thing you want to do wherever else on chain, and whatever else it is. And we're at a point now where we can stitch together that user journey in a way that's one click and makes sense. What that means for an app developer is that just like a user shouldn't have to intuit these cross-chain actions, neither should the average app developer. Kind of depends on the use case, right? If you have like a deeper Web3 or DeFi use case on the front end, the app developer is going to need to sort of understand that landscape maybe a little bit better. But if you're trying to just get somebody to hold a stable on chain to do a thing, then I think we're close to the point where the app developer need not be able to kind of, or need not fully sort of encode that cross-chain logic and that cross-chain kind of market mapping into their front end, right? We should just let a user hold a stable and be able to route them to do a thing they want to do. And so you're obviously seeing sort of like a bunch of bank alternative apps try to get people to hold stables today. But I actually think that that's going to expand, and just like the average kind of Web 2 like UX, normie UX, crypto enabled app is just going to need to build for a stablecoin native user experience, and then leave the rest of the cross-chain logic, whatever it may be, to the underlying kind of networking layers. And I think we're close to that being reality.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, the Venmos of the world, the PayPals of the world incorporate crypto purchases and such. Yep. But incorporating stablecoin rails into those would be, it's like the easiest way for our entire space to penetrate the fintech category without shoving anything down their throats that they don't want.
100%.
Which is kind of what crypto's felt like for a while.
Yeah.
Especially if you've been in the space for a while.
Yeah.
but this kind of demonstrates the power of, okay, we built something that is better than what is currently happening in the space, and like, we're just going to bring it to you guys, and you guys can adopt it, and it's going to make your product better. It's a very mutualistic kind of experience, I think, and I think that's why it's actually working. Totally.
I also like, sometimes I encounter, maybe on Twitter or somewhere, like a little bit of disappointment from some crypto deeper people. Like, oh, we've been building all this time, and the best we've come up with is a effing stablecoin.
I mean, I say it all the time. Like,
dollarize everybody.
I didn't get into crypto to build stablecoins. Like, that wasn't my end game. You know what I mean?
Totally. But my counter to that is like, we're on the path.
Yeah, of course.
We're on the path.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of assumptions we made that were not true in 2015 to 2020 era, that people were just going to be willing to adopt a different currency.
Yeah.
No, it's a step too far. You got to get them on chain first.
Yeah.
And then show them on chain that their money can, like, they can have greater optionality and their money can work better. And then let them opt into the deeper stuff. And stablecoins are just like that first step. And we've really unlocked that first step in mass right now for sort of the average person and like institutional capital alike. And so my counter to that is kind of like bearishness perspective is like, no, it's happening.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe not as fast as any of us wanted it to happen several years back, but it's happening and it's accelerating.
Yeah.
And stablecoins are going to be that unlock, right? And we build a lot of great tech, but it turns out at the end of the day, you got to translate it into something very simple that people want. And clearly people want stables. So good on us, right? Let's go from there.
Yeah. So you guys are building kind of like this interop kind of orchestration type of layer, if you will, for the stablecoin ecosystem. So obviously you see value in that. But outside of eco, in this kind of stablecoin supply chain that you laid out, from issuance to chains to applications, you mentioned a few areas where there are room for competition. For example, in the issuance, Tether and Circle don't pay the yield back to their users, right? So Tether is earning billions of dollars, and 13 to 14 billion last year on the back of 4 or 5% treasury bills, short-term treasury bills, where it's kind of like the hidden cost of holding Tether.
Yep.
Now, the counterpoint to that is like, well, this doesn't really matter because in Turkey, Syria, and Lebanon, they just want access to dollars. They want to be able to save in dollars. They don't really care about the yield, perhaps not educated enough, or it's not that's not the main concern. It's more about this kind of way to save.
Yep.
So that's just like one example of where you could see, something like M0 come in
100%
and kind of like chip away at that market share.
Yep.
Where else do you see opportunity in that supply chain? It could be chain, app, issuance. Like, are there other clear opportunities or companies that you're seeing pursue? And like, what are they doing, or like, why do you think this is an opportunity that needs to be addressed? I'm just trying to get a better understanding of like where there are maybe some kinks in this supply chain, or like a bit of like inefficiencies.
Well, there's inefficiencies all over the place insofar as you need to do anything else cross-chain, right? But that's what we've already talked about. That's just the fragmentation.
And we'll get more into that,
right? Yeah. And so that just is. And it's not really a knock on USDC and USDT. It's just that they're exposing one competition flank on the interest equation to other new entrants.
Of course.
Clearly, they've been very successful caring about what they've cared about so far, right? And I'm sure they'll meet that competition head on as it heats up, right? So it's not really a knock. It's just sort of an admission that there's still some space to play there, right? And so the question you're asking is like, where else outside the issuance equation, where there might be the most opportunity for this use case?
Or like where like, people always say like, where's the value going to accrue? Which I think is a silly way to think about some of the markets. But like, like where's the opportunity outside of issuance that people aren't seeing?
I always tend to think that value accrues to whoever owns liquidity.
Okay. Like order flow. Like,
I think that's sort of like how would I put it? It's kind of like a barbell strategy in the sense that I think that like transmission fees in between are going to commoditize down to something very, very low. I hope. Yeah. Right. This is a faster, better way of moving
the whole
money.
Point.
Right. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And I think that whoever sort of owns liquidity or owns order flow on the front end is going to have much more margin. And so we tend to think about both of those sides of the equation. And to the extent we capture fees in between in our own network, we assume in our long-term models that those fees eventually go to like effectively zero. Right. And so I think that the better you can sort of in-house and manage stablecoin liquidity, certainly cross-chain and cross-asset, that becomes a very valuable opportunity. The more front-end actions you can translate into a stable send also becomes a very interesting opportunity because it allows the developer to kind of build that stablecoin native UX without having to worry about more like we talked about. We're not really there on either one of on the sort of like seeing tons of, I think, unit economics with either one of those opportunities yet. It's still early days. So most of the stablecoin use cases we're seeing are just like very boring and very simple and very fee-based. And that might be fine, especially in a non-chain kind of off-chain hybrid environment, right? Set up a B2B wholesale payment platform. Have your people like incentivize your customers to opt into holding and moving stables instead of dollars. Everybody wins.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's very clearly what we're seeing right now. And that's great. It's a strong demand signal. I'm focused more on the on-chain value capture and the on-chain capital efficiency. I think there's still like a lot to optimize and play out there. Yeah. But most of what we're seeing right now, I think is in that kind of hybrid on-chain, off-chain use case because the on-chain kind of interop or liquidity management just like isn't quite there yet. And the fact of the matter sort of is that at the end of the day, a lot of people want to settle in and out of their stables with some frequency. And so you need to sort of hedge and allow them to do that. And so I think the use case landscape right now is like actually a little bit boring, but not in a bad way. It's early days. I think it's going to get sort of way more interesting and way more programmable as we get through the rest of this year and into next year.
So when you talk about the settlement and on the liquidity front here, from what I understand is like there's a last mile problem here with a lot of these coins where it's like stable coins where it's trying to get them off of a chain or off of the on-chain rails into a spendable account, whether it be a bank, a fintech, et cetera, where there are fees and delays. Are you guys addressing that problem? Who's addressing that problem? Like, is that problem persistent in every country? Is it better with certain stable coins? Like what is the landscape of that problem? And is it something that is like, that we need to be seriously concerned about?
I still think it's a little bit early on that problem. Like that's a network effect problem.
Okay.
Right. Like get enough institutions supporting stables, get enough people holding stables, understand where the kinks are, kind of like where the gaps may be, just like there's gaps in the existing banking system. Right. And try to optimize for those things. To the extent that liquidity remains on chain, I think we'll build a better solution. That's my main motivating factor. Keep the volume on chain.
Spend on chain, right? In person.
100%. If we're not doing that, then what the hell are we doing?
I mean,
move the money on chain. Keep it there.
Okay. All right. We'll get into eco. I just got one last question about the kind of the dual kind of David and Goliath of USDC and Tether here. We've got both of them have exploded this year. I think they're up to about 250 billion total market cap. I think we could easily get to 1.5 trillion like 100%. This time next year.
Trillions.
Trillions is like the meme. Plasma's doing well on that meme.
For sure.
People are.
It's a great meme. I'm glad they're doing it.
Trillions. So we've got these two, which are different strategies, and Circle was almost rumored to be bought by Ripple, which I think that has been put to rest.
That would have been a ride.
That would have been bad.
That would have been a real ride.
I would not have been happy about that. But I think they're going to do the IPO. I think Coinbase will. I don't know what's going to happen there, but there was rumors. And then Tether has just kind of gone a more global strategy per se, and you could also just say a bit more like Maverick with regards to the regulatory arbitrage. And I think that's paid off just based on total amount like supply and whatnot. But are you seeing it from your perspective? Because you have quite a unique perspective with regards to chains and people actually using these things. What are you seeing as far as this battle goes? Who's winning or who's got the an edge in certain categories? How do you think about and how should we be thinking about USDT versus USDC?
I just feel like this is an oversimplification. USDC seems to be winning stateside, the most valuable market in the world. USDT seems to be winning globally. Like simply put, that's okay. Both are enormous markets, right? And both are valuable businesses. I think that USDC is designing toward some assumptions about the stablecoin regulatory future in the US to try to entrench their position further. And that market's going to grow a lot. And if they're successful in that, I think it's probably strategically a good move. I think there are a couple trends I've seen that are different with either one of them that could be interesting from a go-to-market perspective. I've seen Tether this year support several upstarts and kind of like open standards that extend access to USDT, right? So we have Open USDT, we have USDT 0, a few other variants, and they seem to be leaning into more of this like programmability around Tether and on top of Tether. And I think that that's compelling. I think that I've seen real traction with protocols adopting USDT as a result. USDC seems to be going in a slightly different direction. I think they're sort of like understand very well that it's a good payment technology, and they understand pretty well that there needs to be some interest in the equation. And I'm seeing more activity around some concept of USDC-based consumer plays and USDC-based accounts. So it's a slightly different direction, but if they're able to deploy that in the US, obviously it's going to be very, very valuable. And they certainly have, I think, the resources to get that integrated with many of the major fintech consumer apps and sort of related payment platforms, right? We'll see whether they actually sort of are able to penetrate that, but it's a different strategic bet. And so that's what I see from both of them right now. It's pretty interesting, but I would just like overly simplify the equation to say I think USDT still wins globally. USDC is entrenching itself in the US, and we'll see where the overlap or how much overlap play out, right? And then of course USDT has their soccer club investments, their farmland in South America, whatever else it may be.
Bitcoin strategy as well.
Totally, maybe it'll end up being the Berkshire Hathaway of the stablecoin space in 10 years. Who knows?
Yeah.
So no comment on how those long-term bets play out.
Yeah.
That's where I'm seeing the traction right now.
And do you have any thoughts around USDE or these kind of different type of stablecoins, these algorithmically backed stablecoins or these basis trading stablecoins?
Yeah.
Right. Like USDE is actually meant for effectively rate cuts. Like if there are rate
100%.
cuts, USDC will do very well.
Yep.
And if we get a bull market, which we're kind of in, right?
Yep.
So they might be a clear, number 3, 4, whatever. And then there's a bit of a drop off, but just curious, like your thoughts there and, on the rest of the landscape.
Enormous opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like near and dear to my heart. Our like earliest roots are in that early algo stable day, sort of circa 2017, 18, right? Nothing worked. Yeah. But, we all ran some experiments. It was great, ourselves included, right? Everything was built on Ethereum at that time. But like, I think that was a harbinger for kind of what you can do. And Athena's come along the last couple of years, given like a way more organized and transparent market environment, way more liquidity to access, and deployed something very elegantly simple. And what it did, though, is it basically like jogged stablecoin season 2. And that's been amazing, right? And so I give them so much credit for how they've gone about it, but for also, I think, inspiring this sort of like stretch of stablecoin issuance experimentation that we're in today. Stablecoins were dead before that. Remember? Like post-Terra, dead. USDT, USDC, only game in town. That experimentation was gone. And certainly that dust needed to settle for a little while because none of the early stuff worked. That was a reckless endeavor. There's some stuff that wasn't reckless that just didn't work as well. But basically the launch of Athena kind of jogged stablecoin experimentation again. And they created an incredibly valuable platform themselves, but I also think they sort of set kind of the canvas for a bunch of new entrants, right? Some more or less exotic, but I give them a ton of credit for that, and I think they deserve a lot of credit for, in many ways, kind of like leading us into this new stablecoin era with a legitimate different model and a like legitimate independent third-party entrant to the incumbents that were already here. That's been really exciting to see. And I would expect, as eco scales, for USDE to become more and more important in a lot of these flows as they continue to kind of deploy in different directions and get a lot more organic traction.
Tired of multi-chain headaches? You need Omni. Omni makes being on-chain feel like you're online. Perform any action on any chain in less than 2 seconds. It's all powered by SolverNet, Omni's breakthrough SDK for cross-chain speed, scale, and cost. To kickstart adoption, the Omni Foundation is offering $10 million in rewards for SolverNet-powered apps. Start earning today at omni.network.
Innovating finance. Global, institutional, and on-chain. Deep liquidity to drive capital efficiency. Now, maximize yields on institutional-grade liquid staking with METH. Unlock $1 trillion of capital via FBitcoin. All of this secured by Mantle's treasury of billions in stables and ETH capital pools. This entire ecosystem is coordinated by a vast network of seasoned VCs that are aiming to create the next generation of banking and financial technology. This is Mantle.
So when I was, and I appreciate that candid response because I think that they've done very well as well.
Yeah.
Wish that I was able to invest back in the day.
Indeed.
So when I was originally thinking about kind of RWAs and stablecoins, let's say in last cycle, 2020, 21, the thought was it was just going to be Ethereum. Like there was this like kind of meta that this was only going to be built on Ethereum because, well, it's the most censorship resistant, most decentralized, best technology for this kind of like value. But like we're clearly seeing either like, purpose-built chains, Plasma, Codex, Converge. You talked about stable, and then even Ethereum, Solana, and then other chains getting actual real Buildle, Securitize, BlackRock, et cetera, on them. Like, what went wrong for Ethereum? Why were they not able to capture all of that value? And why, what makes these institutions want to build either in a multi-chain environment, which facilitates what you guys do, or on a semi-permissioned, permissionless chain environment where they have also kind of a bit more control over?
This is like maybe a little bit of an anti-hot take. I think less went wrong with Ethereum than people blame them for.
Yeah.
Ethereum has made remarkable technical progress. I would say what they've done is they've focused on the tech for the last few years. Rollup roadmap worked, but it's kind of like we've come out the other side with all this fragmentation stuff to solve. That's fine. Like we're on the technical maturity curve, right? And they've solved a ton.
Yeah.
What they have conceded is a very, very aggressive, incentivized, coordinated business development effort to get a lot of those institutions on chain. They've largely delegated that to the rollups themselves or the DeFi protocols, right? Just to tie the last answer together, thank God for Athena.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's been effectively like a business development arm for Ethereum vis-a-vis stablecoins. And so I just think they've taken a different platform approach.
Yeah.
I think that you see and hear the social pressure now to organize more of that competitive effort against the other ecosystems. I think they have tons of value yet to capture. And interestingly enough, I think as Ethereum scales, a lot of that is going to come back to mainnet.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of a hot take. I kind of hope it does.
Yeah.
And so I don't think a ton has gone wrong so much as it's been a difference in focus with a ton of progress sort of on its own merits.
Yeah.
But perhaps less technically obsessed, more business organized competitors have come in along the way and really made some headway.
Yeah. And I also think that for the more kind of like purpose-built chains or for the more specific use case type of chains, it's compelling for institutions to be able to have control over like a sequencer or a validator set
100%.
or whatever it is, right?
Yep, 100%.
They want to control that.
Yeah, that's right. I think there may be that Ethereum's general purpose nature has probably left the VM not as customizable or sort of simplistic as a stablecoin only transaction flow would otherwise require. So there's clearly some optimization there that some of these new entrants are trying to make.
Yeah.
But that's just I don't think that that's something that's gone wrong. That's just what Ethereum
by
is.
design. Yeah. So you guys have recently put out the Echo portal as for it's been a good while there, and you guys have been integrating chains.
Yeah.
Making the stablecoin transfer experience easy.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about, so one issue that I've seen from intra providers is a lack of what I would call extensibility.
Yep.
So you've got 10 chains back in 2022.
Yep.
20 chains. It was okay, we can be everywhere. Now there's hundreds. And likely going to be thousands and thousands of real chains. But as you said, power law will kind of dwindle, and there'll be ones that win and focus on others that are just kind of more long tail.
Yeah.
But when you're thinking about eco and its extensibility, what does that mean to you? How are you guys going to be able to support the Converges, the Codexes, all the individual purpose-built chains for institutions?
Yeah.
Do you guys want to?
Yes.
And then how does that actually look like from a strategy perspective?
Just show me stablecoin order flow and we'll help it flow.
Okay.
We'll help it flow better.
Yeah.
What I think that looks like from our perspective is a little bit more wholesale. So kind of the 80-20 rule again, I would expect there'll be somewhere like in the realm of 15 to 20 chains, to which tons of stablecoin volume, the vast majority of stablecoin volume, are ultimately settling or sort of happening. And I care most about tightly coupling those chain ecosystems and squeezing every bit of capital efficiency that we can out of those stablecoin flows. That's what I care the most about. I think that focus benefits us. It's like a real heuristic for us to support new chains, to work with new chains. We're not chasing every next flash in the pan that might come and go. I'm really just focused on where is durable stablecoin liquidity going to be required and where is durable stablecoin demand going to continue to scale. And so which kind of sets us apart. I think a lot of interop is generalized. A lot of it's kind of any token, any chain. A lot of really good tech there. It's not really the game we're trying to play. I'm trying to flow stables along the most valuable routes. And then to the extent we need to get last mile to the hundreds or the thousands of rollups or chains that may be single purpose app chains out there, I'll compose with another protocol that sort of can deliver the stablecoin or the liquidity that last mile to do the thing.
No.
But what I care way more about is kind of like the wholesale flow and settlement among those usual suspect fat chains, some of which already exist, a few more that I think will sort of attain that status over the course of the next year.
Yeah. And so which chains are those and who's using Eco?
Right now, I'll take that in reverse order.
Yeah.
So right now, Eco tends to be the fastest and cheapest way to move a stable at some size among Ethereum rollups. You'll usually clear that in a few seconds for an order fee on the order of a basis point. Okay. And okay, so who is that? And where we tend to win on fast and cheap is $1,000 and up. Okay, so this is not going to be the person refilling gas for $10 or whatever. We're competitive in that realm, but where we mostly see people utilizing this would be intent solvers that are rebalancing. There's some unintentional overlap with Everclear there. That's not our optimization function, but we do see some organic traction there. We see people looping and farming. They're not farming us, but they know that there's sort of some loop that's valuable between a couple protocols on chains we support, and that we're the fastest and cheapest way for them to recycle their capital. So there's a great deal of efficiency in that. It's kind of the same use case. The more often you can recycle capital, the more efficiency you squeeze out of it. Whether you're an intent sort of solver rebalancing or whether you're some professional DeFi farmer that's trying to loop faster than everybody else, right? And then we see, of course, a bunch of scattershot order flow kind of across the $100 to $10,000 spectrum of people just trying to move between L2s. A couple of those users I know are kind of like crypto payment checkout type flow providers. They end up unbalanced at the end of the day or the week, and they need to move some size to rebalance themselves, usually 10K to 100K. And we can provide that sort of on really good terms. So those are the people that we see utilizing this. Initially, this is a protocol integration. You mentioned Portal. We built Portal just as a way that an average user could hit and try it. Yeah. The product is really what we call routes, which is what powers Portal underneath. Yeah. But there was no UI for it, so we built a UI. We think it's pretty slick. We think it's pretty easy. I was a little bit, to be honest with you, it's kind of like begrudging about it at first because
about the UI,
about building it, because like bridging is a necessary component to the broader network we are building, but Eco is not just a bridge. Yeah. And so I thought if we released a Portal UI, we're going to get kind of like pigeonholed into that corner of the market. Yeah. And we fortunately haven't. I think we've been able to sort of paint the sky on the narrative well enough that people understand that that's sort of one step along the way. And it's seen some success, and it's certainly led to a lot more volume. So it was the right decision to do. I was a little bit stubborn in the beginning because I was worried that we would kind of get typecast a certain way. Yeah. So that's where we're seeing traction. You had a second part of your question. What was it?
I've just got a bit more of a pointed question, and perhaps I'm a little bit underinformed, but I'm just curious, why would I use Eco instead of just go direct to something like a intents-based bridge or like a CCTP for USDC?
It is intents-based, so you're going to get that type of user experience. One-click stable send, faster and cheaper. Okay. Right? Of course, with CCTP, you're not going to get slippage. You're just going to wait longer. Yeah. It's just different trade-off. Yeah. Right? Okay. So if you're willing to pay the convenience fee effectively of 1 to 5 bips to move your money faster, of course a lot of people are, then you would use something like our solution, which is intent-based, and I can talk about why. But if you're moving at size, certainly anything upwards of 6 figures or more, where you can wait 10 to 20 minutes and you don't want the slippage, then that's where CCTP shines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you guys have prioritized intense. Is that just because you've seen that that's been the best kind of evolution of fast, cheap bridging with little third-party risk?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, our vision is a UX vision.
Okay.
And fast and cheap matters a hell of a lot to good UX. And right now, intents are the best, or they're sort of like the best method for ensuring fast and cheap. Incidentally, I think they're also the best method for chain expansion and permissionlessness. I think you can deploy an intent protocol far and wide faster than you can often deploy a native kind of multi-chain token standard or a native bridge by some other design. And some people might quibble with that assertion, but I think that's what the market reflects right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ryne, last one for you. What's the grander vision for Eco?
Eco is a stablecoin liquidity network and a stablecoin transaction protocol. The best way to think about it is, what would it look like to have like an interchain Visa? Okay. So let's think about what Visa does. A lot of times people don't stop and think about this because it's so ubiquitous and it's so easy to use.
Yeah.
Right. But what is Visa? Visa is a liquidity network, foremost. Basically settles payments in dollars among banking systems that don't otherwise interoperate. They don't otherwise talk to each other. Right? We're trying to do something very similar with stables between chains that don't otherwise talk to each other. But also, critically, and this is what people underestimate, Visa is also a UX.
You're right.
Right? Everywhere in the world, you can swipe or you can tap. That is remarkable. It is amazing that they have been able to abstract all the underlying settlement complexity into that very simplistic interaction across continents. Oh. And that's what Eco is here to do as well. If you hold a stablecoin on chain, like I said before, it should be sufficient to do whatever else you want to do. And I want to enable any arbitrary cross-chain action calling to our network and our liquidity to be a one-click stable send. I want to let an app developer only build for that and only care about that very simplistic user tap. And I want to let the end user not have to care about the hops in between. One click, full send is our tagline, and that's why. And I think that's, as we construct it, I think it's going to prove to be an incredibly valuable solution on chain, sort of with this landscape we find ourselves in, with stablecoins being the most valuable asset class, and with a bunch of chains outside of Ethereum clearly here to stay. And so that's the end vision for Eco. That's what we're ultimately building toward. That's what I think that we'll be able to prove out and realize even within the year.
Thanks for joining me today. And hope you have a good week in the city, man.
Amazing. Love it.
Thanks guys.